is reimagining change. Reimagining change, then flipped iceberg metaphor. Our speaker, a member of Zimbabwe Institute of Management for quite some time. I've known him now for almost about 6 years. Together at some point in the executive committee for Harare branch, and is a well-seasoned facilitator. And in terms of his education, he holds an MBA and is currently working on his PhD in business management. He's also the current MD for Tesley Consultants, where he deals with development, organizational change, and development. So I think because of our time, I'll then hand over this time to Benjamin. He's going to share with us what he has got on this topic in the next 30 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes of question and answers and any contributions, then we'll close. We hope to finish at 2 sharp. Mr. Musindo, please.
I trust that you are in good health, and knowing how important Zoom is, I'm sure that you were prepared for this webinar. Our topic, reimaging change, the inverted iceberg metaphor, resonates well with our theme for the year, which runs management and leadership within and beyond the pandemic. So it is in this view that I hope to share with you pertinent issues that relate to how managers see the change and how managers enable change to take place within their organizations. So in this perspective, recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has been added to the list of major drivers of change in today's business operations across the globe, with the threats of renewed outbreaks and the emergence of more drug-resistant strains of the virus. There's so much change underway, and more is on the horizon. Globally, modern-day business environment is characterized by rapid and continuous change. Since the time of Kurt Lewin, when he developed the change model of unfreezing, moving, and freezing, it was thought that this linear model would operate for forever. And since then, we've had a proliferation of change models. However, despite this, academics and practitioners agree that about 70% of change programs fail on implementation. This research was undertaken by McKinsey in 2015. So many organizations are failing to cope with the new normal, and data and insights on the impact of coronavirus outbreak indicate that economic growth has gone down, as evidenced by a wave of corporate bankruptcies, financial stress, and even social unrest that we've witnessed in our neighboring countries. In Zimbabwe, it is estimated that we've incurred a decline to the tune of -8% GDP growth. The outlook remains uncertain worldwide. Researchers have concurred that failure of most change initiatives relate to, among others, poor planning, inadequate change leadership, lack of resources, prioritizing on systems over people, all of which point at managerial competences. Given this background, it is imperative for business leaders and managers to redefine their thinking and actions about change as they seek to ensure the survival and sustainability of their organizations, even beyond the context of COVID-19 pandemic. The primary objective of this webinar is to highlight the underlying issues that tend to limit managerial capacity to implement change and to explore how leaders and managers can leverage on a deep understanding of those issues that sometimes may not or may hinder effective implementation of organizational change. The flipped iceberg metaphor is used to stress the need for in-depth understanding of underlying issues in organizational change management and to persuade managers from relying on superficial linear frameworks that have been characterized or that have characterized traditional change management approaches. In this context, we also need to go through fundamental understanding of organizational change management. One of the authors in change management literature defined organizational change management as a structured process of managing people, processes, technology to align business strategy with the changing environment that is working. And another popular definition of change management is the actions by which a company or business alters its components, such as its culture, technologies, or infrastructure, or even internal processes to adapt to new environments. The one given by Tim Creasy is very important, and I believe that is the one that guides us in understanding underlying issues. He says change management is the application of processes and tools to manage the people side of change from a current state to a new state. And in that respect, to meet or to achieve desired results. So here we are. Why talking about change management? The obvious reason is change is a constant in our environment, and the need for change has been driven by opportunities and problems, and hence companies need to adapt to change, to improve, innovate, and even stay competitive in what we can call the VUCA environment. The VUCA environment deals with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that managers are facing. So for individuals in an organization to be able to adapt to new values, they must have a sound understanding of change management so that they work in new ways and new directions. The other reason why we need to talk about change management is to develop an enabling framework for managing, particularly the people side of change, that will be needed in driving all the processes for the desired future to be achieved. Despite the existence of change management models, like I indicated, change management continues to be a dynamic area and happens to be the most difficult part of managerial work. It is therefore imperative for both researchers and managers to continue the search for alternative frameworks to manage change more effectively and reduce the mortality rate that appears to be as high as 70% from our initial understanding from the research that I indicated before. Reimaging change, therefore, is a perspective that persuades us to move from the surface. By surface, or at the surface, organizational change can be projected as a simple process involving unfreezing, changing, and refreezing, resulting in shifts in organizational structure, implementation of new technology, and adoption of new business models. However, overseeing those changes has become very difficult for managers and can even be intimidating. A critical look at the way in which change is conceived is therefore necessary as a starting point. Thus, re-imaging change is a critical inquiry perspective by which managers are drawn to focus on underlying aspects of change management. The traditional approach to change can be considered as a tip of an iceberg. Most of you have heard the iceberg metaphor talked from the cultural perspectives. In fact, the metaphor was introduced by one American journalist, writer Ernest Hemingway in the 1940s, implying the journalistic tendencies of focusing on surface elements without explicit discussion of underlying themes. Hemings believed that a deeper meaning of the story should not be evident from the surface. Since then, the iceberg metaphor has been used by researchers and writers on organizational culture to confirm the value of discrete and salient aspects of organizational culture. In change management, the iceberg metaphor represents a view that change is a rational and strategic process by which organizations choose a new course of action to adopt the change or to adapt the change. The tip of an iceberg represents a formal view of an organization. That public perception, characterized by order and rationality of structures and processes, procedures, and seemingly unity of roles and responsibilities that we often see from a naked eye perspective. If I can take you for a tour, geographical tour, this is what an iceberg is like. It's a phenomenological, it's a geomorphological issue or feature that is seen in cold areas. And these icebergs have become a tourist attraction in Greenland, in Antarctica, showing beautiful colors because the snow that caps them attracts a lot of dust, and illumination from the sun can give them various colors ranging from green to red. And it appears quite attractive. This is what change can resemble. In most corporates, we have corporate wear, corporate colors, new buildings, things that one would appreciate as change. However, if we take a cross-section or a deeper image of an iceberg, it would show that there are roots to that geomorphological feature, which appears very beautiful on top. Of course, because of global warming, you may find very smooth surfaces on top as ice melts, but deep below, with a funny shape, a rough feature sunk under the water level, showing the realities of what suspends the otherwise beautiful feature on top. As we delve into the features of the iceberg, that top only represents a small proportion of the bigger chunk. Like I said, we're often content with new products, new packaging, changing systems and structures, with new management in place, who are sometimes touted as game changers. In its complexity, change is dynamic, and hence we must look at the rough picture, what lies below it, because the partial view of an organization is only 10% of what it is really. Underneath, there is full of ambiguity, chaos, emotions, uncertainty, anxiety, intrigue, with diverse cultures and political interests in place. So based on the iceberg image, the application of traditional methods or models of change have limitations owing to lack of depth or in-depth consideration of what lies beneath, which happens to be the people aspect of change. If we compare these two images, the one is the normal look of an iceberg, and the other is the flip side of it, where we can have the sunken view on top. This happens when an iceberg flips. Literally, flipping is changing sides to have the downside top and the top side underneath. This is caused by varying densities of ice and salt water, and melting can trigger calving or breakaway of bigger chunks of ice, and it can actually change the equilibrium of an iceberg, causing it to flip. Because of global warming, glaciers have been retreating, and this contributes to iceberg flipping. So as a metaphor, the iceberg flip is about shifting our mindsets as managers towards recognizing the value of people engagement to resolve underlying issues of change that act as barriers to the successful achievement of change outcomes. So when you look at the underneath or at the flipped iceberg image, it shows the roughness of the features, like we would understand all those issues which are not sometimes as palatable pertaining to change in our organizations. People have a lot of fears, there's a lot of uncertainty, and managers sometimes are not even sure of how to handle change. For instance, if one did not take their time to understand how the COVID-19 would affect our operations, the organization will be left without leadership that is in the know. And even if we knew, but the uncertainty surrounding the end of this era makes us vulnerable. And these are some of the ugly pictures that we don't face, but we need to interrogate. So the visible and tangible indicators, like I said before, of corporate wear and business performance suffering or doing well, must be taken note of. Employee disengagement is not simply disengagement. It must be interrogated. When turnover is high at a workplace, that must be interrogated in terms of underlying reasons. The less visible but accessible forms of underlying issues are like stagnance in innovation, where people lack the drive to innovate or to change, where leadership and management have challenges in developing strategies, where there's an undercurrent of frustration, where systems and processes may not be working very well. So the interrogation takes the direction of invisible and subconscious issues, such as culture, where stakeholders do not fully understand and embody the organization's values, where leadership themselves may find themselves resistant to change. Any of these underlying issues must be understood so that we can explore the deeper issues behind them. The flipped iceberg perspective challenges our conventional framework of managing change or for managing change. We have to be drawn from symbolic, linear, and mechanistic processes to more engaging and flexible approach that focuses on people-centered underlying issues. The flipped iceberg perspective is complementary to existing well-known models in seeking to provide managers with powerful insights into the impact of underlying issues that can make or break change efforts. And this compels managers to focus on our assumptions, the assumptions of employees, the habits, the beliefs of people that they lead. And an appreciation of those assumptions can help us to develop a more open and flexible approach to change involving people. Quite often, when people are not involved in change, we would call it a poorly managed change process that results in financial losses, low productivity or performance, decline in the quality of work, wasted time and resources, inability to retain staff, increase in employee sickness levels, real or imagined, poor staff morale, inefficiencies, loss of customers and suppliers, missed opportunities, damage to business brands, loss of credibility, and change fatigue. Yes, on change fatigue, it happens that when we attempt change and fail, the next time you want to introduce change, no matter how meaningful it is, people will be tired of trying new things, and this must be avoided. So these are the consequences of failure to articulate change from the people's perspective. However, without understanding the deeper issues, one may want to drive change mechanically, say, let's increase sales, let's put more people into marketing, let's rebrand. And those efforts can prove to be futile until we understand the importance of the underlying issues that emanate from the people side of change. The lack of management support for change is one of those underlying issues. When change comes, it comes like a torrent, sweeping even the minds of managers from the conventional business operations to their known. And therefore, managers must be aware of the fact that they need to support employees in change. And to do that, they must have a proper understanding of the change drivers and the alternatives that are available. And two, they must avail resources. If the change requires some certain amount of resources, they must have a budget for that. And the lack of commitment to change is also another area of commission. That commitment is seen by engagement, where you want to deal with negative employee attitudes, which stall innovation. So managers must take it from this perspective that engagement of employees is key, because limited understanding of change and its impact can actually prevent managers from playing their role as change leaders. Then, of course, failure to involve employees in the change process is one of those areas. When there's anything to be done in a new way, employees must be involved, must be educated to know the newer direction, the newer dimensions. Otherwise, it spells or it points at communication, where we can assert that poor or inefficient communication towards change. And you'll find that resistance to organizational culture is a permanent feature if we do not engage people. Like I indicated, as a major challenge or obstacle to organizational change. There are many issues that we can talk about, but communication is a key in dealing with people, is a key feature in dealing with people. Managers ought to make an effort that everyone acknowledges the need for change and understands where the organization should be. Employees want to know the reason for change, not only the benefits of change. They want to know what will become of them and how that will benefit them personally, how that will benefit the organization. So in that respect, managers must be able to develop and communicate change plans. And they must be continuously involved in evaluating progress of change initiatives. It is also necessary to celebrate success as you implement change plans. In terms of communication, there will never be too much communication, particularly in this era where communication has been boosted by technology. We need to use all media, Zoom meetings, websites, WhatsApp platforms to communicate change. We ought to be transparent and even acknowledge problems as we implement change, because there's need for continuous buy-in and cooperation. Never let change take its own course. As change leaders, managers must be able to control and evaluate change processes. Otherwise, if let alone, the outcomes of change may be undesirable. In terms of communication, there is a big challenge or obstacle that is often referred to as the illusion of knowledge. Johnson Osma advanced the notion of iceberg ignorance, demonstrating false equivalence. When we look at the first iceberg, 4% of problems is known to executives, while 100% of problems are known to frontline workers right at the bottom. There is an illusion of knowledge where managers sometimes believe that they have 100% knowledge of problems of the organization, implying that problems are not well known to frontline workers. If you check with the second part of the image, it is an assumption that 4% of problems, only 4% of the problems are known to frontline workers. We have to solve this false equivalence by sharing knowledge. Because once managers assume that they know it best, employees may resist assuming that they know it best. So the various ways by which managers engage employees will solve the false equivalence, where we have an equal opportunity to understand what's happening and the problems within an organization. So this false equivalency is a challenge that managers must be able to solve. Management is a social science where we deal with human behavior, feelings, and thinkings that become the basis of their actions and decision making. So the moment we are void of knowledge in terms of sharing our experience with employees, we create a false equivalence at all points, and there will be like competition how employees understand problems of the organization, and how managers also take the same problem. Flipping the iceberg should be seen as a strategy by which managers must stop acting hierarchically. A hierarchy of obviously is important. A hierarchy is important for maintaining order and structure within an organization. But in terms of change, can act as a barrier where information flow may not be as desirable, thereby creating what we have just described as false equivalence. So in a very superior manner, and not valuing our staff is something that blocks our efforts to achieve successful change. Successful change occurs when we have shared information, shared knowledge about challenges. For instance, we are dealing with COVID-19 impact. Have we taken time to share? Have we taken time to share the impact of COVID-19? Have we taken time to share how we as an organization have reacted or should react to some of the challenges that we face in this COVID-19 era? It is through communication that we can forge ahead. And in that dimension, I would like to mention particularly training as an important feature in our organization. Training enables us to share knowledge and to have that knowledge applied in our workplaces. We should be able to impart knowledge in various ways so that organizational members embrace change in a uniform manner. The recommendations that we can make out of these presentations are that managers must be able to align people with efforts to reinvent themselves through the flipped iceberg model and refocus on underlying issues that have become barriers to the way we implement change. We must foster change in individual behaviors of employees. We must give frontliners a platform and encouragement for feedback on issues that we sometimes ignore. Embodying a flexible mindset on part of managers is also part of the new normal. We must embrace change. We must embrace a growth mindset, understanding that people will continue to learn and acquire high-level skill sets, which enable them to solve problems, to engage in critical thinking and creativity. So investment in continuous workplace learning and development is a key strategy. Once again, I would like to emphasize that you will never communicate too much. We must constantly engage people, ask why we do things the way we do, interrogate those underlying beliefs and assumptions that exist in our organization, dive deep and consider what holds the organization from achieving the intended change. Sometimes it's necessary even to consult an outsider who has a different view than you have been holding in the organization. So those are some of the methods. In conclusion, research conducted by Deloitte in 2015 revealed that 80% of leaders cite culture and employee engagement as top change management challenges. Here we are, re-imaging change is a perspective that compels managers to examine underlying aspects of change involving organizational culture and even people engagement. Instead of us indulging in superficial rebranding and other visible symbols of change, the flipped image of an iceberg should be used to guide us to look into what hinders us from successful implementation of change from the people perspective, resources aside. So that disconnect, which is prevalent in hierarchical based companies or organizations, should end. That's how we flip the iceberg to optimize the effectiveness of people engagement, to shift our mindsets and look at our people as a resource for change. Someone said the hard side of change management is actually the soft side of it, implying that it is not as easy to change attitudes or relationships within an organization. These relationships are deeply ingrained in organizational culture of our people and the culture of our people. It is important that we should be like swimming ducks, calm at the surface, but paddling hard underneath. As a manager, you shouldn't panic, but make sure that you observe the underlying issues so that change processes are under control. Managers should be much like swimming ducks, calm on the surface, but paddling underneath, paddling hard. I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this presentation. It's just a tip of an iceberg again. We need to delve deeper into the real issues that impede change. COVID is real. To stay safe, let us mask up, let us sanitize, let us also maintain social distance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for your very insightful presentation. When you sent through the topic, I was a bit confused with what you were covering, but well articulated. Thank you very much. We have a question for you, if I can share with you on the chat. I think it's from one of our participants. Let me just read it for you. It's from Newman Sango. It says, the issue of celebrating too early before the culture of change fosters in all employees. Okay, the issue of celebrating too much early before the culture of change fosters in all employees. What can we do to guard against this problem?
Thank you for that important question. Yes, managers should be timely in terms of celebrating achievements, in terms of change. Since they work with a change plan, they must know what aspects of the change process have been achieved that need to be celebrated. We don't just celebrate without a schedule. There must be timelines within which we ought to achieve some change outputs. What I meant by celebrating is each time we reach a milestone in terms of our change plan, we must encourage each other as a team that we are in the right path, and that will boost energy among the team members to continue fostering change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Colleagues, it's open for you to share your thoughts, raise any questions, any comments. It's welcome at this moment.
How are you, Mr. Sunguro?
I'm fine, Doc. How are you?
I'm fine. That was a very good presentation from Mr. Musindo there, but I have some questions for you.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yes. I wanted to find out from him what he thinks the sources of the change, or probably who should be at the forefront, really, when we are effecting changes in our organizations, in our companies? Should it be the employees or top management?
Thank you for that question. Once again, it's an important question, very pertinent to change management. It is believed that because of the hierarchy, managers steer the ship. And in this respect, that's when we look up to professional development of managers to be able to scan for changes in the environment and communicate the impending changes. So definitely, management must be at the front in terms of recognizing signs of change or the need for change. However, they have to educate or inform employees and also get their perspectives in terms of how they look at that change, how they consider that change, how they think they will be affected by that change. This is what I meant by communicate and communicate, because the different views that we may have in respect of change between management and employees may be a cause for the obstacles that we meet. We must have a shared understanding of what the cause of change is and how it impacts on our organization. Managers.
Benjamin. Okay, thank you, Benjamin, for that. Any more comments? Any questions, colleagues? Tinashe Masuku, please go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Musindo, my question, how to manage a change in a crisis with no time to plan? For example, my friend Murombo recently secured a contract to provide a COVID-19 response services within 3 days to a JTP company services, which with a more than 3,000 employees.
Right, thank you very much. Not that I'm an expert, but I'm very sure that we've embraced risk management as part of managers' role within our organizations. And in terms of risk management, we look for any possible departure and the cause of those departures from our plans. If X doesn't work, so what? So the risk management aspect is actually planning for a change in respect of even unknown, unplanned for events. Risk must be managed well in advance. Unknown risks must be thought of prior to implementation of any plan in our operations. And when COVID, for instance, came about as a driver of change, most people may not have had the imagination of COVID as a disease, but perhaps there are other things that equally disrupt operations. So it's not just COVID that would disrupt operations. In risk management, you have to analyze and think of any event that may disrupt operations. So once again, I'm pointing at risk management as one of those areas that managers must be conversant with in order to anticipate disruptions in operations and possible alternative courses of actions that will help to ameliorate the damage. So without really giving a specific example like you did, whenever there is a plan, we must have some alternative. If this does not happen, or if it happens in a negative way, how do we go about it? So managing is not a simplistic thing, it's change management, because each event is affected by the external environment.
Thank you. Dube, Please go ahead. Your hand is up.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can
can
hear
hear
you,
you.
but there's noise in the background.
Yes, I'm dealing with a lot of issues in the background. My apologies. Yeah, but my question is, you mentioned something on Kate Lewis' model of change, unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. The question I wanted to ask is timeline, moving people from where they were and to the point of actually enabling them to embark on new behaviors and adopting new culture. And again, if you look at most of our work or our countries, government departments, by their very nature, are very difficult animals to deal with. Can this change be effected in government departments or government ministries towards improving efficiencies and so on going forward?
Thank you very much. I'm sure you are referring to the bureaucratic nature of management in government departments. By bureaucratic nature, we are talking about the hierarchical order of management. Like I indicated earlier in the presentation, that with newer perspectives in change management, yes, structure is important. We need hierarchy for structure and order, but the way we engage people is more important to enable change to take place. So even during the period of unfreezing, when we are looking at what is new and having to destroy habits, old habits, we need to engage. And so we have to desist from bureaucratic tendencies and be more engaging, which is the essence of this presentation. Reimaging change involves more like people-oriented, engaging people, and accountability on both, on the part of both managers and the employees. So perhaps the unfreezing, changing, and freezing model, which appears to be quite linear, has in it, from this perspective, moments of reflection. Say, while we are unfreezing, to what extent have we gone deeper to look at underlying issues? What may make people resist change? What issues need to be addressed before people are said to have lost or to have thrown away old habits? So we are saying it's possible within government departments, as long as that engagement is authentic and timely, because the issue with change management, if it is driven mechanically, we may not have adequate time for people to change their feelings and attitudes. So whether it's government or private sector, in essence, deep insights are required. Knowledge of people and how people react is required. Therefore, I'm urging managers to reimagine or reimage the change and focus on the bottom line issues, those that are underneath the surface. So if we simply drive the change and say by next week we would have done 1, 2, 3 things without having looked at issues below the surface, we may end up failing to achieve the necessary change. So whatever you're doing, whatever stage you are, unfreezing, changing, or moving, and freezing, refreezing, let's engage. Let's communicate. It's a good model, but in the absence of looking at the underlying issues, it becomes a rhetoric and a mechanical in approach.
Thank you, Benjamin. Any more questions, colleagues? Any contributions? We have 5 minutes. All right, I take it that I think he has explained his, the whole concept well. What therefore maybe is left for me to say is to thank you very much for attending this webinar. Just to advise you that we will be sharing this video and the presentation on our website, and also will be sending to your email addresses. So some of you might need even to just write your email addresses on the chat box for me, but nevertheless, we have them for most of you, and we'll be sending you the copy of this within the next 24 hours. And also to let you know that we have a management newsletter that we are running quarterly, and this presentation and 2 more other presentations that are coming will also be, will have articles that will also detail things that could not be shared within the hour. So you will have even a more comprehensive analysis of these issues in the newsletter that will come in November. Once again, it is for free for you members, and all our prospective members can always download it from our website, and we'll be sending you a copy. For the board and management staff from the Institute of Management, would like to thank Mr. Benjamin for this detailed presentation, and you colleagues for taking time to attend. We hope to see you in our next presentation, and dates and links will be shared with you in due course. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, and good afternoon.
Thank you.